you may want to have someone come in and just review that situation thoroughly, review your contracts, review the way of working to make sure that you are not getting yourself into an issue there, because there are lots of cases going on across Canada right now about employee misclassifications.
You're listening to the Unsure Entrepreneur Podcast with Roger Pierce. Whether you're scribbling business ideas on a napkin or wrestling with the should I, shouldn't I question, get ready to explore the realities, the risks, and the rewards of entrepreneurship as we share the stories, scars, and successes of small business owners.
Hey there. Welcome to the Unsure Entrepreneur Podcast, where we talk honestly about what it takes to start and run a small business. So if you've ever hired someone, managed a team, or even thought about it, today's conversation really matters. Because here's the reality. Canada has over 1.2 million employer businesses, and most of them are small businesses. Yet many are operating without formal HR structure in place. And that's where things could go wrong. Sharilyn Vandermolen is the founder and chief collaboration officer at HR Collab, a fractional HR consultancy helping small and growing businesses to build strong, people-first workplaces. Now, she's a certified human resources leader, a certified diversity and inclusion professional, and a workplace investigator with over 15 years of experience. Over her career, she's hired more than 1,000 employees, and get this, reviewed over 100,000 resumes, and advised leadership teams across Canada, the US, and Latin America. Plus, she's no stranger to this format. She's the host of her own wonderful podcast called The Resume Whisperer. Sharilyn, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's so good to have you because, we haven't talked about HR and employment and what small businesses need to know at the very beginning to get that right. And I'm trying to remember back to when I hired my first employees years ago on my small, struggling marketing agency. And I was terrified because all of a sudden I had to pay someone else first before I paid myself.
Yeah,
right?
That's scary. Yeah.
You can't not pay your employees because guess what? They're not going to stay long. And by the way, it's illegal. So that was petrifying. And then when I ramped it up and I got like 8, 9, 10 employees, I'm like, oh my God. Whenever I heard the mail person bring a check, back then we got everything by checks in the mail, I would run to the mailbox hoping for a client check so I could cover my payroll and make sure everybody was, because that's the stress and strain of a small business, at least a disorganized small business like me. So it's a big issue. It's a big worry. And hiring, it's exciting because it means growth, but it also means a whole lot of responsibility, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. And I can totally understand the fright. So I have, not related, I have a music business on the side. And so I have musicians that I need to pay, and I pay them before I get paid, similar to you. So I completely understand. And if that client happens to be delinquent, it can be frightening.
It can be frightening, and it's a big responsibility. And government wants its cut. They want their taxes on schedule. As you know, they don't mess around, especially when it comes to source deductions, right? You can't let that mix up with your operating budget and operating cash. That's a big area of concern. It's where a lot of small business owners get into trouble, frankly. The point is, hiring is a big step and you want to get it right. So they want to listen to someone like you who can help them through this process.
I think that is really where HR can be a valuable partner, especially for a small business, because sometimes they don't know truly what they're hiring just yet. They know that I just can't go on this way anymore. There's way too much to do and not enough hours in the day. So they know they need someone, but what do they need someone for? What will they be taking off their plate? And so getting into those discussions about where are the pain points for you? Where are things bottling up? Where are things getting just completely unmanageable? Let's talk about, if we take that off, what kind of a role is that, right? Do you need an operations director or do you need an administrative assistant at this stage? Like, where are we? Where are we going? Those kind of discussions.
Or do you need a fractional HR consultant? Ta-da!
Ta-da!
I think I know where I can find one. So We'll get to that in a second, but I want to hear more what you're doing in your business. But let's frame it a bit more too, and talk about why HR matters earlier than a small business owner might think. Right? Many founders, I find, delay HR until there's a problem, and by then it gets expensive for them to fix it. And like you said, they kind of figure it out later, or they procrastinate and they hope they're going to figure it out later. But small businesses, we report really high turnover, often larger than higher turnover rates than bigger firms, because small guys like us don't have structured HR practices in place. We don't have that luxury. So when should a small business start thinking seriously about HR?
It really does depend on the kind of business that you're in. And I know those answers, like it depends, are not everyone's favorite cup of tea, but there's different bits of HR that come in at different stages. So if you're someone who's ready to make their first hire, that's a great time to talk to a fractional HR person or an HR consultant. Let's talk about who you're hiring. What problems do you need solved? Start to carve out, what does success look like in this role that I'm going to hire? And maybe have that HR partner actually go and do the early bits of interviewing for you, vet some candidates for you, and then hand you a handful of the top contenders. And then you just pick, right, from who you like out of that. And when I say who you like, it also means the skills that they have and all that. But if you're someone who's now between 5 to 15 people, now you might be wanting to talk to an HR professional about consistency. And when I say consistency, I mean maybe some basic policies that might get some people's, trigger happening when I say policies, but things as simple as a blackout period during the busiest periods of the year for your business. That's a policy. No one takes vacation for those 8 weeks. Simple. Something simple. You can have an HR partner actually help you with that and document it, pretty it up, put it into a little handbook, and all the employees get that. You also might want to be documenting processes and procedures. So the kind of those SOPs for your business, so that when you do bring new hires on board, you've got that ready to give to them. And then if you're someone who's approaching that 20 mark, that 20 to 25 mark, now you're getting into the area of compliance with legislation. There's a lot of policies that absolutely need to be in place, especially in Ontario, as you're teetering between that 20 and 25 mark. So, of course, I always encourage, once you hit 20, get those things started, because you could teeter over into 25 before you know it in a busy period, and now you're out of compliance. So you want to make sure you get those things done. And then as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, then there's other things you want to worry about. But those are just some small things. If you're a small business approaching 20 to 25, those are some things at different stages you might want to think about.
I love the way you broke that down by employee count, and that's so important. So for your type of role, I mean, you can step in anywhere along the line, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have helped okay, we're ready for our first hire business. And I've also worked with businesses where I used to work before that had between 160 to 800 employees.
If we could mention, you worked at Campbell's too, right? You were in management there. How big was that at the time? Must have been huge.
When I first started, it was 800. When I left, it was 160 in Canada.
A lot of people.
A lot of people. And we shut down manufacturing, which is why we went from 800 to 160.
At 20, 25 employees, should I be looking at an internal HR manager, or can I still outsource for help like from you?
I don't think you need a full-time person yet. It really does depend on what you don't want to do yourself. When you're getting into 20 to 25 people, you do want to make sure you've got, as I said, you've got some compliance to manage. Okay. But then once the compliance is developed, do you need somebody there to police it necessarily? Can you do that yourself? Those are those things. You can have someone come in and build some processes. Maybe you have someone who is a part-time HR person now, who works maybe 15 hours a week for you, or a fractional person who's working 15 hours a week for you, or maybe it's just 5. It really does depend on what you need. Do you need the project work done, the daily work done? Or do you need some consultation more at a higher level as you continue to build structure because you're planning on a great big expansion soon. It depends, right, on where you're at.
Can you delineate between those two definitions, project work and structure work?
Project work would be coming in, developing policies, helping you do that based on your business specifically and the understanding of your business. And once those policies are done and you have them in hand, now it's just maybe a yearly refresh that we look at. So the project is done. Projects can also be coming in and doing recruitment for a period of time, staffing up. It's seasonal for you. Let's say you're landscaping business and you need to hire 20 landscapers suddenly. Great. Bring someone in, get them to do all the resume screening, some quick conversations, pick of the litter, send them off to the manager to have now the final interviews and just pick who they want. That's what we can do. And then bing, bang, boom, we're out. Ongoing work. You might be someone who's got some, maybe you're implementing an information management system, so an HRIS system, maybe Rippling, maybe Bamboo HR for those people that maybe heard some names out there. And you want someone who can do weekly payroll for you, weekly consultation for you, maybe on employee relations matters, things like that. That can be something that's ongoing.
That's very helpful. So amongst all this, where do founders get blindsided? I mean, let's say someone who's never hired a person before in their life. They've been an employee, but they've never hired a person before. And where do you see people get blindsided?
There's a few areas. I would say the first one that comes to mind is when they're hiring, they hire someone they like or who is like them versus someone who can actually do the job or has expertise in that area or brings that set of skills that's not currently represented in the business. It's very easy. And I've been involved in those conversations, sitting in just to see what's going wrong with our hires. And then I sit in on the conversation, and suddenly the conversation turns to hockey or baseball. And I'm like, all right, this is great. Well, let's wrap it around back to the questions that we have in front of us. And, let's continue exploring your experience. You got to kind of rally these things back around because they're now hiring someone that feels like them, someone they can sit back with and have a conversation. But can they do the job? That we don't know. So that's a big one. When the new hire arrives, then are there clear expectations in place? And if there aren't, performance issues can start to happen. Then are we having those tough conversations with them? And if we're not, because we say, oh, they're new, they'll get it. That was just a mistake the first time. Well, now you've written permission for that mistake and it could become a bigger issue later. And I would say the last one would be, so I have some entrepreneur friends whose employees really are contractors. Are they legitimately contractors or are they actually employees in a contractor suit? So you may want to have someone come in and just review that situation thoroughly, review your contracts, review the way of working to make sure that you are not getting yourself into an issue there, because there are lots of cases going on across Canada right now about employee misclassification. So that apparently is a really big one and hot button issue right now.
Wow, so much to unpack there. And the last one I'll start with, because I've had a friend of mine who lost his business because of that. 40, 50 people because of the misclassification of CRAs. Are you an employee or are you a contractor? Designation. It's a very fine line. There's a whole set of rules. We won't get into it here. They can talk to you. You can walk them through it. But this is a big gray area for a lot of business owners who just want to get things done, man. And so we go, hey, Joe, can you come in and work for 25 hours this month and for the next couple months on this project? Okay, wait a minute. Is Joe working for you as an employee or is Joe actually a subcontractor? Does he have his own clients outside of you? Does he have his own business card? Does he have his own, who provides the equipment and the facilities? All these things are the questions and the criteria. But this is a big risk factor for a lot of business owners because if you get it wrong, man, you can get walloped with taxes.
You really can. And you know what? Listen, I'll say that small business owners are not immune. I did deal with this situation in a very large company who had mostly employees, but a couple subcontractors. And one of them actually came to the office every day. And something changed in the legislation, right? So I was like, oh, let me look at this. And suddenly it was realizing that we were basically their only client because they were working full time for us. Even though they had their own equipment, they had everything else. Really, when you looked at it on, I think the questionnaire is like 55 questions. Really, when you look at it on a whole, they were an employee. And so they did need to be switched over. But the bonuses there, benefits, pension plan, all those lovely things that came with it.
Which a lot of business owners don't want to have to deal with, right? I'm thinking of the IT industry in particular. A lot of people kind of moving in and out of employment versus self-employment type roles very fluidly because sometimes you need an IT guy to come in and just fix something. There's a whole heap of issues there. Again, if you get it wrong, why not reach out to someone like you first and make sure your policies are in place and getting things set up from the beginning? It's worth it.
Yeah. And I would say too, I usually work in tandem with an employment lawyer for consultation when needed as well. So sometimes an employment lawyer is needed just to make sure you've got the paperwork right. But other than that, we can help you and help you know when you need to go to an employment lawyer for sure.
Because, like you just said, an employment contract, an employment agreement, that's something else you have to have in place. You have to have your job description in place, your performance review in place. Just, I'm not an HR person, but there's all kinds of setup, providing a workstation, having, workday breaks and all that stuff in place, right? I don't think about that right now. I don't have any employees at the moment. I don't really want any employees, but it makes me exhausted to think about what I'd have to set up to hire somebody. And I would rather have someone like you come in and do it with me or for me. So that's what you can do, right? You can help get this stuff going.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done a lot of contracts for people. I've also done the contractor agreements as well to make sure it's not an employment contract. The wording is different. Certain things need to be said. It's a difference. I know someone who has 45 contractors that work for them. 45. They're really part time employees at the end of the day because they don't have businesses. They're invoicing, yes, but they don't have businesses. And it's not the business that is offering the service, it's the person. And there's payments into WSIB you need to worry about. Do you know what WSIB is? Workplace Safety and Insurance Board. Yeah. And if they're going to be on site in people's homes, if they get hurt, who is covering? If they call their doctor and go in and see their doctor, hey, I was hurt at work. Oh, where do you work? And now suddenly everything comes to the center and to hyper focus. And WSIB is calling that business. Why aren't you paying into WSIB for your employees? Well, they're contractors. They're a worker. That's the only thing that counts is that they're a worker. Contractor, employee or not, doesn't matter. Did you know that? No.
No, I didn't. See, this is why I'm talking to you. Oh, there's so many issues. But, the good news is, and I always go back to the era of the entrepreneur, fractional HR, fractional marketing, fractional CFOs. You don't need to hire someone full-time on staff to get the help you need. You don't have to sweat that. You can reach out to someone like you and your firm to come in and deal with it. Maybe it's a long-term relationship. Maybe it's a short-term relationship, but there are solutions like yours out there. And that's what makes entrepreneurship so possible today. I'm off my question list, but because I got excited there, but let me ask you some more questions. I want to ask you about this because, okay, I touched upon this on a blog a couple of years ago. With smaller budgets for small businesses, it's often difficult for us little guys to compete with big companies when recruiting talent, right? Someone might say, hey, well, $100,000 to go work for big XYZ Corp, whereas my little small business maybe can only afford 50 or 60, and we don't have all the health plans and all that other sexy stuff. Is there anything you can suggest to the small business owner who can compete in that arena without necessarily the budget?
Well, I mean, if it is a difference between recruiting someone at 100,000 and paying them 60,000, you'd have to be offering a lot of perks. But I will say this, and I remember talking about this on a workshop that we did together because it can be done. And I'll tell you, even the big guys have to deal with this. So, and if you don't mind, I'd love to use a story to illustrate. When I worked at Campbell's, we were not paying, let's say, at the top tier level. We were at the time paying around average. But there were certain things that we had at Campbell's that no one else had. And that was number one was a work-life balance. And I'll tell you that most of the people that worked at Campbell's had families, and young families at that. So that was clearly an attractive thing in a consumer packaged goods company, is to have a work-life balance. The other thing we had was an entrepreneurial mindset. So if you were given a portfolio of business, you had the autonomy to work that portfolio the way that you wanted to work that portfolio, as long as it lived into the organizational goals overall, whether it be the number one snacking pillar or whatever that was, as long as you were living into those things and it was aligned, you had a lot of autonomy. You come from another CPG company, very little autonomy, very micromanaged processes, and you're working until 9 and 10 p.m. at night. So while we weren't the top in salary, we really hit it out of the park in other areas and things that are very enriching to people's careers. So what we were really able to do was give someone that next role. If they're an assistant brand manager, I'm going to use some other names there. If they're an assistant brand manager working at Pepsi or P&G, they're competing with, I don't know, 45 other assistant brand managers to be the next brand manager. We have a brand manager role open, and you're not going to get your role in your company for maybe another 8 years. But if you come over here, because you've been working as an assistant brand manager for 4 years and we know you're ready for the next step, you can get your next title here. And that was what we did. So we had to change our recruitment strategy based on what we had available and the opportunities we had to give. And people are still there. 8, 10 years later, they're still there. Average time at an employer is 4 now. So clearly they are doing something right. I say they now. I still say we. And it's very strange. But if you are a smaller employer now, these are the kinds of things you want to think about. Okay, so here's where we are in base salary. In the market, where is that? You want to know where you sit. Someone like me can help you figure that out. Then you decide what you can add. I know an employer who has people who can bring their dogs to the office. Even PetSmart does that. But you could be a small employer, have a place and do that. Bigger companies are all pushing people back to the office now. Are you a company that doesn't have brick and mortar? Now you're offering a remote opportunity to someone. And that might mean so much to that working mom who has to do pickup and drop off at school. Now they don't have to worry about their schedule. They just work from home now. Wonderful. Great. Older people who are caring for elderly adults potentially. Now you can help them. Now they're back in the workforce and they're going to perform at a super high level for you because they're getting these other things that either enrich their life or help their life. I'm going to add to that now. Growth opportunities, development opportunities. You don't have the highest base salary, but maybe you offer a 3-month sabbatical with a stipend where they can go and pursue a certification or additional education. What other things can you think about? There's definitely flexibility, I mentioned already. Access to leadership. Yeah, you might be coming in having done marketing for so long and you've reached kind of as far as you're going to go in the company where you're at today. But now you're talking to a startup where you would be the chief marketing officer suddenly. And you're going to be a part of building that business from the startup to acquisition. Like, can you imagine?
I'm glad you brought that up. It's actually reminding me, it's in my book, The Unsure Entrepreneur. If you want to start a business of your own one day, go work for a small business owner because you're going to learn how to be a founder. You're going to get exposed to all these little different jobs, skills. You're not pigeonholed into a cubicle with 1,000 people in the building. You get to try a little bit of everything. If that is your goal, is to develop your skill base, your leadership skills, your entrepreneurial skills, as you say, what a benefit of working for a small business.
It's a unique opportunity. And I do remember when I was at Campbell's, us having a certain strategy coming down the line of a new area we were dipping into at the time. And who did I go to hire? Somebody who worked at a startup. It was a cannabis startup, but I knew she had that agility to her and that way of test and try and get out, test and try and get out because of her startup experience. So we brought her in at a super high level in the organization. You never know what it can provide for you in your career. Got to try the little guys out.
Yeah. And I like the way you talked about remote access. You're right. Everyone's being mandated back to the office. Flexibility. Everyone likes that flexibility. So And watching our clock here, I love talking to you, but I want to ask you about this. Hiring is one of the biggest the biggest and most expensive moves you can make, as we talked about earlier. So I want to talk to you about how to avoid hiring mistakes because the cost of getting it wrong, I forget where I got this. Replacing an employee can cost anywhere from 30 to 200% of their annual salary. So one bad hire can really set a small business back in a meaningful way. So let's paint a picture. I hire my first employee and I spend, 6 months training them and I get them a nice little desk over there and I buy them a new computer and I send them to courses and training. I add their account to the licensing of Microsoft and all my software applications they need to access to run the business. And then after 6 months, they leave and I got to start all over again. That's expensive. How can I avoid that? What are some hiring mistakes that you see out there?
I think what you need to do is get really clear on what you're looking for first. So make sure that the job is very clearly defined and that you know what success looks like in that role. What's the outcomes of that role? What do you need it to do, result in, impact, etc. You also want to make sure that you have a structured interview process. So you want to make sure that as you're going through your candidates, you are asking the same or at least similar questions to every candidate so that you're comparing the candidates appropriately, right? Don't have a conversation with one about the sports game last night and then
Raptors
not
lost. Yeah.
right. And then just on accounting with the other person. Like you want to make sure you're talking about accounting with both people if you're hiring an accountant or a finance person. And I find a lot of founders to go on gut. And I'm not saying that you have to dismiss your gut altogether, but don't make it your only criteria. And ensuring that you're hiring to complement the team, not duplicate the team. So you want to think about your team like a fully completed puzzle. And each puzzle piece is unique in that puzzle, but it all fits together at the end of the day, right? And all comes together with a beautiful picture. So you don't want a carbon copy of everyone in your business because then it's just going to go round and round and round. You want people who are going to challenge ideas sometimes. And I know that can get scary, especially when you don't think you have a lot of time and you just don't want to explain or get into, you just do it the way I said. You want to try not to be that way because sometimes that person bringing their expertise in can actually find a better way neither of you thought of before. So you want to make sure you're bringing in the puzzle piece, that unique puzzle piece, and then allowing them to do what they're really good at. I would say too that desperation leads to bad hires too. So, oh my God, I just need this person like yesterday. Right. And
You'll
I
do. You'll
understand that.
do.
I
Yeah.
totally understand that. Trust me. But if you let that urgency and that desperation dictate who you hire, you could probably make a really costly mistake. You want to ensure that you're hiring are they coachable? Have you heard accountability in any of their answers? Like, I love asking candidates if they've ever made a mistake. Actually, I assume they've made a mistake. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. What was the situation and what did you do to make it right? And I want to hear what they tell me. It's a very interesting question. That's on every one of my interview guides. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. Can they communicate? Can they debate with you? Can they push back on you a little bit? Are you going to allow them to push back? Want to allow people to push back. You can train for everything else.
And this is where I would imagine if I wanted you to, and I was hiring your firm, you could sit on my interview panel. So that's not just me and the job applicant. It's a three or four of us on the panel, so we don't get sucked into a wrong hire, right?
Yeah, you can do that. I've helped people with here's the questions you should ask, and here's what you should listen for in the answer. And if you don't hear it, ask this and kind of probe a little further. Because again, sometimes people just really don't interview well, but they've got the skills. That's who I am as a recruiter. I help people show up at their best during their time with me so I can hear all the fabulous things that they've done. And I hope that the people I kind of train to also interview will try not to make the candidate nervous, but make them comfortable so they can talk about all the great things they do.
And I love how you said hire for the complement, the missing piece on your team.
That's
You
big for
know,
me.
Yeah,
especially as a diversity and inclusion professional. It's diversity of thought too, right?
because I don't want to work with more people like me. God forbid. I want to work with people who are different and complement me. Oh, so
You don't
important.
just want yes people surrounding you, right? You want to say, Roger, I hear what you're saying. Have we thought of this? Because here's what I'm seeing from my corner, my perspective. And I feel like we could get into a potential problem here. Here's how I would prepare for that. Right. And then aren't they a great employee if they do that? And my cat is jumping on the desk. I'm just going to.
I love it. Well, listen, we're gonna head into the wrap, but I want to ask you one last important question. Most people listening to us aren't HR experts, as we talked about. They're unsure entrepreneurs. They're getting into this whole thing, and they're maybe just beginning to run a business. If they take one step this month to improve how they manage their people, let's assume they've got like a very basic starter team, maybe 2 or 3 people on board. What would you recommend to someone to get better at managing a team?
I'm going to go a little off the hiring topic now. You've got your few employees. Okay, great. I'd be willing to bet you $100 you have a conversation that you have not had that you need to have. And maybe you're a little nervous about having the conversation. Maybe you don't like confrontation. Maybe you're worried about the reaction. I'm telling you, you need to have the conversation, and it doesn't need to go the way you think it's going to go in your head. Nothing else this month is you have that challenging conversation. And if you need help with it, I can help you out with it.
That's probably a perfect segue because I was going to ask you about this on your website, HR 911.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? Helping out?
It doesn't have to be that, but yes, that's exactly what that's for. That honestly could be for anyone in the business, the employee or the people leader. But if you have a problem and it's an immediate problem and, there's no time for discovery call and putting a proposal together or anything like that, and you just need help right now, this is going on in my business. This is what's happening with this employee. What do I do? Give me a call. That's what HR 911 is about. And I'll help you out. I'll tell you what to do.
It's like calling the Ghostbusters. You come and rescue them, right?
Well, I may not come with all that fancy equipment, but I'll come with some know-how.
Do you have a vintage wagon with flashing lights like they did?
I do not have a vintage wagon.
Get
No.
to work on that, eh? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, too much fun. Okay. So if you get into trouble, call Sharilyn. If you want to be proactive, call Sharilyn. I think we've covered it. That's fantastic. So, Sharilyn, we've got to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here and helping new entrepreneurs figure out their HR and hiring strategies. But tell us, what's the best way for someone to reach you?
I would say you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Absolutely. Sharilyn Vandermolen. Or you can head on over to my website at hrcollab.ca. Don't forget the .ca now. We're Canadian.
Okay. And don't forget the podcast too, the Resume Whisperer. It's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's for job seekers. There's a lot of tips in there, and hopefully I'm helping a lot of people because it's a really, really tough market out there. So it's the Resume Whisperer podcast.
Great. Thank you for that. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again sometime soon.
Absolutely will. Thanks for having me.
All right. So if you're thinking about starting a business or you're already in it and try to figure things out, that's exactly why I wrote my new book called The Unsure Entrepreneur. It's an honest look at what it really takes to build a business, including the parts most people don't talk about. You can learn more at unsureentrepreneur.com. And also, here's something new, just coming out, launching a newsletter called Almost a Boss. You might like that name as well, Sharilyn. And it's going to provide founder stories. It's going to provide expert advice. It's going to share resources you can use to explore entrepreneurship. I can always link to Sherry's website there as well. And you can sign up for the new newsletter at unsureentrepreneur.com/subscribe. That's it. Thanks for spending time with me today. And remember, if you're feeling unsure, you're in the right place. Bye for now.
That's it for this episode of the Unsure Entrepreneur podcast. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss other candid conversations with small business owners. And be sure to check us out at unsureentrepreneur.com.